Have you ever had someone look you straight in the eye and steal your heart while smiling? Well, let me tell you about the morning my own daughter called to destroy my life. She didn't use a gun. She didn't break into my house. She used something far more devastating. She used my love for her against me. "Mom, we're leaving tomorrow," Carla announced, her voice sharp as winter wind. "No hello. No how are you feeling. Just cold, calculated business. Your beach house has already been sold. Bye." Just like that. 37 years of marriage memories, gone. The place where I scattered my husband's ashes, sold to strangers. The sanctuary where my grandchildren learned to walk, ripped away without even asking. But here's what my sweet daughter didn't know about her old, helpless mother. Now pause right there with me. Can you imagine? Your own flesh and blood calling to tell you they've sold your property without even asking? The house where you buried your husband's ashes in the garden? Where your grandchildren took their first steps on weathered wooden floors? I stared at that brass clock, watching the second-hand tick while my world crumbled. Sold? The word felt foreign in my mouth, like speaking a language I'd never learned. Carla sighed. She actually sighed, like I was some confused child asking stupid questions. "Yes, Mother. We listed it last month. The buyer wired the funds this morning. You'll get what's left after the mortgage and fees." Then she said the words that lit a fire in my chest. "You should be grateful we handled it for you." Grateful. Let that sink in for a moment. Grateful that my own daughter stole my sanctuary and expected me to thank her for it. But here's what Carla didn't know about her old mom. Here's what nobody in my family understood about the quiet widow who bakes cookies and sends birthday cards and never causes trouble. Sometimes, the quietest people are planning the loudest revenge. I kept my voice steady as silk. "Carla, sweetheart, you forgot one tiny little thing." Silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. "What are you talking about?" And that's when I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I threw back my head and laughed. Not a polite little chuckle. Not a nervous giggle. A deep, belly-shaking laugh that surprised even me. "Oh honey," I said, still chuckling, "you might want to sit down for this. Now, before I tell you what I said next, I need you to understand something. This story isn't just about real estate. It's not just about money or property lines or legal documents. This is about what happens when people underestimate a grandmother's love. When they think gray hair means you're helpless. When they assume a soft voice means you're weak. They were about to learn that assumption would cost them everything. See, 3 years ago, something happened that nobody in my family knew about. Something that would turn their perfect little scheme into the biggest mistake of their lives. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let me paint you the full picture of exactly what they tried to steal from me. Because that beach house? It wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. And what I'm about to tell you next will make you understand why sometimes the sweetest revenge comes from the most unexpected places. Before we dive deeper into this wild ride, I want to hear from you amazing people watching from around the world. Drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. Are you Team Grandma already, or do you think I should have just accepted what happened? And make sure to subscribe to Madam Susan's stories because trust me, you won't want to miss how this unfolds. The best part? We're just getting started. Let me take you back to Folly Beach, South Carolina, where salt air mixes with Spanish moss and every sunset looks like God's showing off. That little blue house with white shutters wasn't much to look at from the outside, maybe 1,200 square feet of weathered cedar shingles and stubborn dreams. But inside those walls lived 37 years of my marriage to Henry. Henry was the kind of man who fixed everything twice because he wanted it perfect the first time, then realized he could make it better. Every summer, he'd drag out his toolbox and find some new project. "Rosemary," he'd say, wiping sawdust from his forehead, "this old place just needs a little more love. A little more love." That became our motto for everything. The kitchen where we taught our grandchildren to make Henry's famous blueberry pancakes. The living room where we'd pile blankets on rainy afternoons and read stories until little voices turned to gentle snores. The porch where Henry and I would rock in matching chairs every evening, watching dolphins play in the distance while he told the same fishing stories I'd heard 1,000 times. I never got tired of those stories. The bedroom where we'd wake up to seagulls calling and where I held his hand through his last sunrise 2 years ago. Where I whispered all the things I never got to say, promises I'd keep visiting this place that held every precious memory we'd built together. You see, that house wasn't real estate to me. It was a museum of love. Every floorboard creaked with children's laughter. Every window frame held fingerprints of tiny hands pressed against glass, watching for dolphins. The garden held Henry's ashes, something I'd never told the family because some things are too sacred for words. When Henry passed, the vultures started circling immediately. Not strangers, family. My own daughter Carla, who hadn't visited the beach house in 5 years, suddenly developed deep concerns about Mom's finances and the burden of maintaining 2 properties. "It's just sitting there empty most of the time," she'd say during her monthly duty calls. "The insurance alone must be killing you. And the upkeep? Mom, you can't handle all that maintenance." Handle it? I'd been handling everything just fine, thank you very much. But Carla had this way of making me feel foolish for wanting to keep the one place where Henry still felt close. Where I could sit on her porch and almost hear his voice in the wind chimes he'd hung too close together because more music is better music. Her husband Derek was worse. Always talking about liquid assets and smart financial planning like my grief was just poor money management. During Henry's funeral, Derek actually cornered me at the reception to discuss maximizing the estate's value. At my husband's funeral. While I was still wearing black and trying not to collapse. "Rosemary," he'd said, using that patronizing tone he saved for children and elderly people, "Henry would want you to be practical. Sentimental attachment won't pay your bills." Sentimental attachment. Like love was some kind of financial liability. But I played the role they expected. The grieving widow who needed guidance. The confused old woman who couldn't possibly understand complicated matters like property ownership and legal documents. I nodded when they suggested helping with my paperwork. I smiled when they offered to handle the details I supposedly couldn't manage alone. I let them think I was helpless. That was my first mistake, and their last advantage. Because while Carla was busy treating me like I'd lost my mind along with my husband, I was quietly making plans. Plans that started with a conversation I had with my dear friend Patricia, who happened to be the sharpest estate attorney in Charleston. "Rosemary," Patricia had said over tea 3 years ago, "you might want to think about protecting what matters most to you. Before someone else decides they know better." At the time, I thought she was being overly cautious. Surely my own daughter wouldn't try to steal my sanctuary. How naive I was. But sometimes, the best lessons come disguised as betrayal. Sometimes, people show you exactly who they are when they think you're not strong enough to stop them. Carla was about to learn that her old mom had been paying very close attention. And I had receipts. Now, let me tell you exactly how deep this betrayal went, because when I hung up that phone, I realized Carla hadn't just made one phone call. She'd been orchestrating this theft for months. The pieces started falling into place like dominoes in my mind. Those casual questions about my financial situation. Derek's sudden interest in helping me organize important documents. The way they'd insisted on having copies of everything just in case something happens to Mom. They'd been planning this heist while sitting at my dinner table, eating my pot roast. Within an hour of that phone call, I was getting calls from strangers. The first was from someone named Brad Hutchinson at Coastal Realty. "Mrs. Patterson," he said in that smooth salesman voice, "I'm calling to confirm the final walkthrough tomorrow at 10 a.m. The buyers are very excited about taking possession of your beautiful beach property." My beautiful beach property. Like it was already gone. "I'm sorry," I said, playing confused, "but I think you have the wrong number. I haven't authorized any sale." Dead silence. Then nervous laughter. Ma'am, your daughter Carla signed all the paperwork as your power of attorney. She explained that you've been having some memory issues and that the family decided this was the best decision for your care. Memory issues. Let that sink in for a minute. My own daughter told a real estate agent that I was losing my mind to justify stealing my house. She made me sound like some doddering old fool who couldn't be trusted with her own property. The rage that filled my chest could have powered the entire city of Charleston. But I kept my voice sweet as peach tea. Oh my, there must be some confusion. Could you fax me copies of all the documents? I'd love to see what my thoughtful daughter has arranged. The poor man was so flustered. You could hear papers shuffling, keyboards clicking, pure panic setting in. Mrs. Patterson, perhaps you should call your daughter directly. This is highly unusual. Unusual? Honey, we hadn't even gotten to unusual yet. The second call came from Palmetto Bank. Apparently, Carla had already accessed what she thought was my account to pay the closing costs. She'd forged my signature on withdrawal slips, claiming I'd given verbal authorization. The third call was from the insurance company. Someone had called to cancel my homeowner's policy effective immediately. By noon, I had a stack of fax papers that told a story more twisted than a soap opera. Carla hadn't just decided to sell my house, she'd created an entire fictional narrative about her poor, confused mother who needed to be managed. She'd told the realtor I was showing early signs of dementia. She'd told the bank I was no longer capable of handling my own finances. She'd even contacted my doctor's office asking about my mental decline. My doctor, bless his heart, had called me immediately. Rosemary, I got the strangest call from your daughter asking about cognitive testing. Are you all right? Because when I saw you last month, you were sharp as a tack and correcting my crossword puzzle answers. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just greed. This was character assassination. Carla wasn't just stealing my house, she was stealing my reputation, my independence, my dignity. She was trying to erase me completely. But here's what she didn't understand about her old mom. When you've lived through what I've lived through, raising 4 kids on a teacher's salary, nursing a husband through cancer, rebuilding after Hurricane Hugo destroyed half our town, you develop what my grandmother used to call steel in your spine. And honey, my spine was about to become titanium. I sat in that kitchen, surrounded by illegal documents and forged signatures, and I smiled. Not a sad smile or a defeated smile. The kind of smile that would have made Henry proud. Because Carla had just made the biggest tactical error of her life. She'd assumed I was helpless. Time to show her exactly how wrong she was. But first, I needed to make a phone call to someone who'd been waiting 3 years for me to need her expertise. Someone who understood that the best revenge isn't served cold, it's served with ironclad legal documentation. Patricia answered on the first ring, like she'd been expecting my call. Rosemary, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice, I was wondering when you'd be ready to play hardball. I need to pause here for a moment, because I want you to understand what this kind of betrayal does to your soul. It's not just anger, anger is clean, simple. This was something darker, more complex. When someone you love tries to steal from you, they're not just taking your possessions. They're taking your trust, your sense of safety, your faith that family means something sacred. I sat at my kitchen table that afternoon, staring at those forged documents, and felt something I'd never experienced before. It was like grief and rage had a baby, and that baby was planning something terrible. You know what hurt the most? It wasn't the money or even the house, devastating as that was. It was realizing that while I'd been mourning Henry and trying to rebuild my life, my own daughter had been watching me like a vulture circling roadkill. Every time she'd called asking how I was doing, she wasn't checking on my well-being. She was monitoring my weakness. Every visit where she'd helped organize my papers wasn't kindness, it was reconnaissance. The woman I'd taught to ride a bicycle, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose heart I'd mended through 3 teenage breakups, had been calculating how to rob me blind. I found myself wondering when it started. Was it right after Henry's funeral, when Derek whispered in her ear about wasted assets? Was it earlier, when I'd refused to sell the beach house the first time they suggested it? Or had it been growing for years, this resentment that her parents had something she wanted? The phone rang again around 2 o'clock. Carla. Mom, she said, and her voice had that fake sweetness she'd used as a child when she'd broken something and hoped I wouldn't notice. I heard you've been making some calls about the house. I hope you're not getting confused about what we discussed. Confused. There was that word again. Oh, sweetheart, I said, matching her sugary tone, I'm not confused at all. In fact, I'm seeing things more clearly than I have in years. Good, good. Because this is really for the best, Mom. You'll see. The money will help with your future care needs, and you won't have to worry about maintaining 2 properties anymore. Future care needs. Like I was already 1 foot in a nursing home. Carla, I said softly, can I ask you something? Of course. When you tucked me in at night as a little girl, and I told you stories about brave princesses who fought dragons, what did you think those stories meant? Silence. Then nervous laughter. Mom, what does that have to do with anything? I'm just wondering if you remember what I taught you about the difference between right and wrong. About protecting the people you love instead of hurting them. Mom, you're being dramatic. This is just business. Just business. My heart, my home, my sanctuary, just business. You're right, honey, I said. It is just business. And tomorrow, you're going to learn exactly what kind of businesswoman your old mom can be. I hung up before she could respond. That evening, I did something I hadn't done since Henry died. I poured myself a glass of his favorite bourbon, the good stuff we saved for celebrations, and I sat on my front porch watching the sun set over Charleston. But I wasn't mourning anymore. I wasn't the confused widow they thought they could manipulate. I was planning. And as that bourbon warmed my chest and the evening crickets started their symphony, I felt something I'd almost forgotten how to feel. I felt powerful. Tomorrow, Carla would learn that underestimating a grandmother's love was the most expensive mistake she'd ever make. The next morning, I woke up with the kind of clarity that only comes after you've hit rock bottom and realized you're standing on solid ground. I made my coffee extra strong, put on my favorite blue dress, the one Henry always said made my eyes sparkle, and called Patricia. I'm ready, I told her. Show me what we set up 3 years ago. Patricia's law office sits in one of those beautiful old Charleston houses with wide verandas and Spanish moss draping the oak trees like nature's own curtains. When I walked in, she was already spreading documents across her mahogany conference table like a general planning battle strategy. Rosemary, she said, her eyes gleaming, do you remember Hurricane Delilah? How could I forget? 3 years ago, that storm had sideswiped the coast, causing just enough damage to flood half the houses on Folly Beach. Insurance companies were swamped, contractors were booked solid, and everyone was scrambling to file claims and protect their properties. That storm was a blessing in disguise, Patricia continued, tapping a thick folder. Because it gave us the perfect opportunity to restructure your assets without anyone asking questions. She opened the folder, and there it was, the most beautiful legal document I'd ever seen. The Lily Rose Patterson Family Trust, I read aloud, running my finger over the embossed letterhead. Named after your granddaughter, just like you requested. And look at this. Patricia flipped to page 3. The house at 247 Ocean View Drive, Folly Beach, South Carolina, has been held in this irrevocable trust since August 15th, 3 years ago. I stared at those words, feeling a satisfaction deeper than winning the lottery. And Carla has no idea. None whatsoever. While everyone was distracted by storm cleanup, we quietly transferred the deed. The trust requires 2 signatures for any property transfer, yours as the trustee, and Lily's as the beneficiary. Since Lily is still a minor, any transaction also requires court approval. Patricia spread out more documents. Here's the beauty of it, the old deed that's still in the county records? The one Carla used for her fraudulent sale? It's worthless. A piece of paper with no legal standing. I laughed out loud, startling a secretary in the next office. So when she shows up tomorrow with her buyers, they'll be met by the county clerk, who will politely explain that the property they think they purchased doesn't actually belong to the seller. Patricia's smile was wicked. The real deed is right here in this trust, and has been for 3 years. But Patricia wasn't finished. She pulled out another folder, this one even thicker. Now, about that second property you asked me to help you acquire. My heart started racing. Even after 3 years of planning, this part still felt too good to be true. The cottage at 249 Ocean View Drive, right next door to your original house, came up for sale last winter when old Mr. Hendricks passed away. You remember? His widow couldn't afford the upkeep. I nodded. Sweet Margaret Hendricks, who'd sold me fresh tomatoes from her garden every summer. Well, Patricia continued, a mysterious cash buyer swooped in and purchased it before it ever hit the market. Someone who had very specific renovation plans. She slid a deed across the table. There was my name, clear as day, as the sole owner of the little yellow cottage that sat on the prettiest stretch of beach in Folly. I can't believe we pulled this off, I whispered. Oh, we're not done yet. Patricia's eyes twinkled like she was sharing the world's best secret. That cottage has been completely renovated into a luxury vacation rental. New kitchen, updated bathrooms, gorgeous deck overlooking the ocean. It's been booked solid for 6 months through that vacation rental website. I felt dizzy. You mean while your daughter was plotting to steal one beach house, you secretly bought and renovated another one? And it's generating more income than your original house ever did. The documents in front of me told an incredible story. For the past year, while I'd been playing the helpless widow, I'd actually been running a successful business. The rental income had already paid for the entire renovation, plus given me a healthy profit. Carla thought she was stealing from a confused old woman. Instead, she was about to mess with a property mogul. Patricia, I said, gathering up the papers, I think it's time to make some phone calls. Starting with? I smiled, feeling more like myself than I had since Henry died. The county clerk. I have a feeling she's going to have some very interesting news for some people tomorrow morning. That afternoon, I made 3 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to Miss Dorothy at the Charleston County Clerk's office. Dorothy and I went way back. Our kids had played together in elementary school, and we'd served on the church bake sale committee for 15 years. Sometimes, having deep roots in a small community is worth more than all the money in the world. Dorothy, honey, I said, I need to ask you a favor, and it's important. Anything for you, Rosemary? What's going on? I explained the situation, how my daughter was attempting to sell property she didn't own, using forged documents and fraudulent power of attorney papers. Dorothy's gasp was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. That little snake! Dorothy exclaimed. Don't you worry, sugar. When they show up tomorrow morning, I'll be ready for them. And I'll make sure to have Officer Bradley there too, just in case things get ugly. Officer Bradley was Dorothy's nephew, a good boy who'd grown up hearing stories about respect for elders. Perfect. My second call was to the bank president, Malcolm Winters. Malcolm's wife had been in my 3rd grade class 25 years ago, back when I was still teaching. I'd helped little Susie Winters learn to read when she was struggling, staying after school for months until the words finally clicked. Malcolm remembered. Mrs. Patterson, he said, his voice serious as Sunday morning, what your daughter attempted constitutes bank fraud. Those withdrawal slips with forged signatures? We have them all on file. I can have her accounts frozen within the hour. Now Malcolm, I said gently, I don't want to destroy my own daughter. But I do want her to understand that actions have consequences. Consider it done. And Mrs. Patterson? I'm sorry this happened to you. Some people have no shame. My 3rd call was the most satisfying. Brad Hutchinson at Coastal Realty. Mr. Hutchinson, I said, my voice sweet as honey, this is Rosemary Patterson. We spoke yesterday about my beach house? Oh. Mrs. Patterson, yes. Did you speak with your daughter? We're all set for the closing tomorrow. Well, that's why I'm calling. I'm afraid there's been a terrible misunderstanding. You see, I never authorized any sale. In fact, the property your clients think they're buying? It doesn't legally belong to my daughter. It never did. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Ma'am, he finally said, his voice shaky, are you saying the documents your daughter provided are fraudulent? I'm saying you might want to call your legal department. Tonight. Because tomorrow morning, when your clients show up expecting to take possession of my house, they're going to meet with the county clerk instead. And she's going to have some very interesting information about the real ownership of that property. I could hear papers rustling frantically. Mrs. Patterson, if what you're saying is true, this could be a major legal liability for our agency. We trusted your daughter's documentation. Mr. Hutchinson, I interrupted gently, I'm 73 years old. I've been dealing with real estate longer than you've been alive. Did anyone at your agency think to call and verify with the actual property owner before proceeding with a sale? More silence. Then, quietly, no ma'am, we didn't. Well then, I suppose you've learned something valuable today about due diligence. I'd suggest you call your clients immediately and explain the situation. It's going to be much less embarrassing than having them find out tomorrow in front of the county clerk and a police officer. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and smiled. The dominoes were starting to fall exactly as I'd planned. But I wasn't done yet. I called my granddaughter Lily. Sweet 17-year-old Lily, who was away at summer camp and had no idea her trust fund had just become the center of a family war. Grandma Rose, she squealed into the phone. I miss you so much. Camp is amazing, but I can't wait to spend time at the beach house when I get back. About that, sweetheart, I said. I need to tell you something important about the beach house. And about your mother. I explained everything, gently, because Lily adored her mother despite Carla's flaws. I watched my granddaughter's heart break over the phone as she realized what her own mother had tried to do. But Grandma, Lily whispered, doesn't Mom know about the trust? Doesn't she know I'm the beneficiary? No, honey. That was our secret, remember? We set it up to protect the house for your future, and we agreed not to tell anyone until you turned 18. So Mom tried to sell something that belongs to me? Technically, it belongs to both of us. But yes, sweetheart. She tried to steal your inheritance. Lily was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had a steel in it that reminded me of myself at her age. What do you need me to do, Grandma? And that's when I knew this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about teaching the next generation that some things are worth fighting for. Just trust me, baby girl. Grandma's got this handled. As the sun set over Charleston that evening, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. I felt like the woman Henry fell in love with, fierce, protective, and absolutely nobody's fool. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting indeed. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was worried, oh no, I was way past worried. I was excited. The kind of excited you feel on Christmas morning when you know you've got the perfect gift wrapped up under the tree. Around 5 a.m., my phone started ringing. Carla. Mom, she said, and I could hear the panic in her voice. I got the strangest call from Brad at the realty office. He said there might be some problem with the paperwork? I stretched in my bed, savoring the moment. Oh? What kind of problem? He said something about the property ownership being unclear. Mom, you didn't call him, did you? Well, sweetheart, I said, sitting up and reaching for my coffee cup, I thought it was only polite to introduce myself to the man handling my property. Your property? Mom, we've been over this. The sale is final. The buyers have already wired the money. Have they now? That's interesting. I took a slow sip of coffee. And where exactly did they wire this money? Silence. Then, to the escrow account, of course. Which escrow account would that be, Carla? Because I never authorized any escrow account to be opened in my name. I could practically hear her brain scrambling. Mom, Derek handled all the financial details. You don't need to worry about. Derek handled the financial details of selling MY House without my permission? Oh honey, that's not handling details. That's called fraud. Mom, you're being ridiculous. We're trying to help you. Help me? By lying to a real estate agent? By forging my signature at the bank? By telling my doctor I'm mentally incompetent? My voice stayed calm, but every word was sharp as a blade. Exactly what part of that was helping me? Another long silence. Then, in a smaller voice, how did you know about the doctor? Oh Carla, I know about everything. Every single lie you told, every document you forged, every person you deceived. I know about it all. Mom, listen to me. We can fix this. If there's some paperwork problem, we can sort it out. The buyers are understanding people. The buyers, I interrupted, are about to get a very expensive education about what happens when you don't verify property ownership before wiring money to strangers. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that you can't sell something you don't own, sweetheart. And you definitely can't sell something that's been in a legal trust for 3 years. Dead silence. Then, barely a whisper, what trust? Oh my. Did I forget to mention that? How silly of me. I could practically taste the satisfaction. You see, dear, after Hurricane Delilah, I decided to do some estate planning. Very thorough estate planning. With a very good attorney. I could hear her breathing getting faster. Mom, what did you do? I protected what matters most to me. Something you clearly don't understand. Mom, please. If you've done something to mess up this sale, it's going to cost everyone money. The buyers could sue us. They could indeed. In fact, they probably will. But that's your problem to solve, not mine. Mom. Carla, let me give you some free advice. When you wake up Derek in a few minutes, because I know you will, and when you start panicking about lawsuits and legal fees and having to explain to your friends why your real estate deal fell through, remember this moment. What moment? The moment you decided your mother was too stupid to protect herself. I hung up the phone and smiled. Within 30 minutes, my phone was ringing again. This time it was Derek, and he was furious. Rosemary, what the hell have you done? Carla is hysterical, and we've got buyers threatening to sue us for misrepresentation. Good morning to you too, Derek, I said pleasantly. Beautiful day, isn't it? This isn't a joke. Do you have any idea how much money is at stake here? Oh, I have a very good idea. But Derek, honey, it was never your money to begin with. Now you listen to me. No, I said, my voice dropping to ice cold, you listen to me. You picked the wrong grandmother to mess with. And I hung up on him too. The war had officially begun. At exactly 9:30 a.m., I received the phone call I'd been waiting for. Mrs. Patterson? It was Dorothy from the county clerk's office, and she was barely containing her laughter. You need to get down here. This is better than anything on the soap operas. When I arrived at the county building, there was already quite a scene unfolding. Carla and Derek stood in the parking lot arguing in heated whispers with a well-dressed couple I didn't recognize, obviously the buyers. Brad Hutchinson from the realty company was pacing back and forth, talking rapidly into his cell phone. But the best part? Officer Bradley was leaning against his patrol car, arms crossed, watching the whole thing with barely disguised amusement. I walked up to Dorothy's window like I didn't have a care in the world. Morning, Dorothy. I believe these folks have some questions about property ownership? Dorothy's eyes sparkled with mischief. Indeed they do, Rosemary. Would you like me to explain, or would you prefer to do the honors? Oh, I think you should handle the official part. You're so much better with the legal terminology. Carla spotted me and rushed over, her face flushed with panic and anger. Mom. Thank God you're here. There's been some terrible mix-up with the paperwork. Can you please tell these people that you authorized the sale? I looked at her with the same expression I'd used when she was 7 years old and I'd caught her lying about breaking my favorite vase. Sweetheart, I said loud enough for everyone to hear, I can't tell them something that isn't true. The well-dressed man, the buyer, stepped forward. Ma'am, we wired $80,000 for this property yesterday. Your daughter assured us that everything was in order. I'm sure she did, I said sympathetically. But I'm afraid my daughter doesn't own the property you think you purchased. That's impossible. Derek jumped in. We have the deed right here. He waved a folder in the air like it was some kind of magic wand. Dorothy cleared her throat. Actually, sir, that deed you're holding hasn't been valid for 3 years. The property at 247 Ocean View Drive was transferred to a private family trust in August of 2022. The color drained from Derek's face. That's not possible. Oh, but it is, Dorothy continued, clearly enjoying herself. The Lily Rose Patterson Family Trust. All the paperwork is right here in our files. She patted a thick folder on her counter. Properly notarized, legally filed, and absolutely ironclad. The female buyer, a petite woman with a southern accent thick as molasses, turned to Carla with fire in her eyes. Are you telling me that you sold us property you don't even own? We. Mom, how could you do this to us? Carla's voice was breaking. How could I do this? I stepped closer to my daughter, and my voice carried across the parking lot. Carla Marie, you forged my signature. You lied to real estate agents. You told people I was mentally incompetent. You tried to steal the one place on earth that holds my most precious memories. But Mom, you made me choose between trusting my own daughter and protecting what your father and I built together. My voice cracked just slightly. And you made that choice very easy. Officer Bradley stepped forward. Folks, I think we need to have a conversation about fraud charges. The buyers immediately started backing away from Carla and Derek. We want our money back, the man said. All of it. Today. We don't have your money. Derek shouted. It's in escrow. What escrow? Dorothy asked sweetly. Because no escrow account was ever authorized by the actual property owner. I watched the realization hit Derek like a freight train. If there was no legitimate sale, there could be no legitimate escrow account. Which meant their buyers had wired $80,000 into, where exactly? Derek, Carla whispered, her voice horrified, where's their money? Derek's face went from red to white to green in about 3 seconds. We used it to pay off the mortgage on the beach house. Like we planned. You mean you spent money that belonged to these people to pay off a mortgage on property you don't own? Officer Bradley was now looking very interested in the conversation. The male buyer pulled out his phone. I'm calling my attorney. And the FBI. This is wire fraud. Now hold on, Derek started, but the buyer wasn't listening. Ma'am, the woman said to me, I am so sorry this happened to you. No one should have their family betray them like this. I thanked her graciously, but inside I was thinking, lady, you haven't seen betrayal yet. You haven't seen what happens when someone messes with a grandmother who's had 3 years to plan her revenge. Because this little scene in the county clerk's parking lot? This was just the opening act. I still had 3 more surprises waiting for my dear daughter and her husband. And the next one was going to blow their minds completely. Dorothy, I said sweetly, would you mind if I made a phone call? I think it's time to let some other people know what's been happening here. The smile on Dorothy's face could have lit up all of Charleston. Rosemary, honey, you go right ahead. This is the most excitement we've had around here in years. The phone call I made right there in that parking lot, with Carla and Derek watching in horror, was to Channel 5 News. Hi, this is Rosemary Patterson, I said sweetly into my phone. I'd like to report a story about elder fraud that I think your viewers would find very interesting. You should have seen Carla's face. If looks could kill, I'd have been 6 feet under right next to Henry. Yes, I continued, it involves a local real estate company, forged documents, and a daughter who tried to steal her elderly mother's beach house by claiming she had dementia. Derek started walking toward me, his hands waving frantically. Mom, hang up the phone. You don't want to do this. I held up one finger, the universal sign for hush, grown-ups are talking, and kept going. The really interesting part is that the property was never theirs to sell, and now there are buyers who've lost $80,000. Within 20 minutes, a news van pulled up to the county building. The reporter was a sharp young woman named Jessica Torres who'd won awards for her investigative pieces on consumer fraud. Mrs. Patterson, she said, extending her hand, thank you for calling us. Can you walk me through exactly what happened here? And so I did. Right there in front of God, the county clerk's office, and everyone in the parking lot, I told the whole story. How my daughter had systematically planned to steal my property. How she'd lied about my mental capacity. How she'd forged legal documents and committed bank fraud. Jessica's cameraman was getting it all on film while Carla and Derek tried to hide behind their car. Mrs. Patterson, Jessica asked, what would you say to other elderly people who might be facing similar situations with their own family members? I looked directly into that camera, thinking about all the grandmothers and grandfathers out there who might be watching, who might be dealing with their own greedy children. I'd say this, I began, my voice strong and clear. Don't let anyone convince you that you're too old to protect yourself. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't handle your own affairs. And most importantly, don't trust anyone, even family, with your most precious possessions unless they've earned that trust. I paused, then added with a smile, and if someone does try to take advantage of you, remember that sometimes the best revenge is served with a side of legal documentation. The cameraman chuckled behind his equipment. But I wasn't done yet. Because while this public humiliation was satisfying, I had bigger plans in motion. Jessica, I said, would you like to see the property they tried to steal? And maybe meet someone who's been very busy turning it into something special? 20 minutes later, we were all caravanning to Folly Beach. The news crew, Dorothy from the clerk's office, who insisted she needed to witness this for legal purposes, Officer Bradley, and unfortunately, Carla and Derek, who followed us like lost puppies because they couldn't figure out what else to do. When we pulled up to 247 Ocean View Drive, my original beach house stood there just as beautiful as ever. Blue shutters, white trim, the garden where Henry's ashes rested peacefully among the roses. But right next door at 249 Ocean View Drive sat my secret weapon. The little yellow cottage I'd secretly purchased and renovated was absolutely stunning. New deck, fresh paint, landscaped yard, and a sign in the front that read Sunset Cottage Vacation Rental. Jessica's eyes widened. Mrs. Patterson, is this your property too? It sure is, I said proudly. I bought it last winter and spent the past 6 months turning it into a luxury vacation rental. It's been booked solid for the season. Carla's mouth fell open. Mom, where did you get the money? Oh, sweetheart, I said, pulling out my phone to show the vacation rental app. Turns out your old mother is quite the entrepreneur. This little cottage has been generating more income in 6 months than your father and I ever made from a regular house. I swiped through photos on my phone, beautiful interior shots, happy guest reviews, booking confirmations stretching through Christmas. 5-star rating, I continued. Guests love the location, the renovations, and the fact that it's right next door to what they called the charming original beach cottage where the suite owner lives. Derek was staring at the rental income numbers on my phone screen like he was seeing a ghost. That's more money than we thought the original house was worth. Exactly. I beamed. While you two were plotting to steal one beach house, I was busy buying and renovating another. While you were trying to take away my sanctuary, I was building an empire. Jessica was taking notes furiously. Mrs. Patterson, this is incredible. You've essentially built a small resort operation right under your family's noses? Not just that, I said, feeling my confidence growing with every word. I've also secured my granddaughter's future. The original house is in a trust that will pay for her college. This rental property will provide income for years to come. I've turned one property into a legacy. Officer Bradley whistled low. Ma'am, I've got to hand it to you. This is the most impressive comeback I've ever seen. But the best part was watching Carla and Derek slowly realize the magnitude of what they'd tried to steal. This wasn't just a sentimental beach house anymore. This was a thriving business operation, a trust fund, and a family legacy all rolled into one. And they'd almost lost it all because they thought their elderly mother was too confused to stop them. Mom, Carla said quietly, I had no idea you were capable of all this. I turned to look at my daughter, really look at her, and for a moment, I saw the little girl who used to help me bake cookies and plant flowers in this very garden. That's the problem, sweetheart, I said softly. You stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a problem to solve. Just when everything seemed to be going perfectly, Derek played his trump card. As the news crew was packing up their equipment and Dorothy was heading back to the courthouse, Derek pulled out his phone and made a call that sent ice through my veins. Hello, Adult Protective Services, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'd like to report a case of financial elder abuse. My heart stopped. Yes, he continued, his voice taking on that fake concerned tone I'd heard him use with telemarketers. I'm calling about my mother-in-law, Rosemary Patterson. She's 73 years old, and I'm concerned that someone may be taking advantage of her financially. Carla looked at her husband with a mixture of horror and admiration. Even in defeat, Derek was trying to flip the script. She's recently made some very large financial decisions that seem completely out of character, Derek continued. Purchasing property, moving large sums of money around, making claims about legal trusts that may not exist. I'm worried that someone has convinced her to act against her own best interests. Officer Bradley stepped forward. Sir, you need to hang up that phone right now. Why? Derek asked, but there was sweat beading on his forehead. I'm concerned about an elderly family member. Isn't that what Adult Protective Services is for? What it's not for, Jessica Torres interjected, her reporter instincts kicking in, is filing false reports to cover up your own fraudulent activities. But the damage was done. Derek had just introduced doubt into what had been a clear-cut case of fraud. Now there would be an investigation into my mental capacity, my financial decisions, and whether I was being manipulated by my attorney or anyone else. I felt something I hadn't experienced since this whole thing started, genuine fear. Because here's the thing about being 73 years old in America, once someone raises questions about your mental capacity, you're guilty until proven innocent. Once that seed of doubt is planted, every decision you make gets scrutinized. Every choice becomes evidence of either competence or decline. Patricia had warned me about this possibility 3 years ago when we set up the trust. Rosemary, she'd said, the one risk we can't completely eliminate is someone challenging your mental capacity at the time you made these decisions. If that happens, we'll need documentation to prove you were of sound mind. Which is why, unbeknownst to Derek, I'd been preparing for this exact scenario. Officer Bradley, I said calmly, could you please call Dr. Marcus Webb at Charleston Medical? Tell him Rosemary Patterson needs him to fax over some documents to your office immediately. What documents? Carla asked suspiciously. Oh, just some paperwork I had done a few months ago, I said sweetly. When Patricia and I were updating my estate planning, she suggested I get a complete cognitive assessment. You know, just to have on file in case anyone ever questioned my decision-making ability. The color drained from Derek's face. You what? I spent 3 hours with Dr. Webb taking every cognitive test known to medical science. Memory tests, reasoning tests, financial competency evaluations, the works. I smiled at Derek like he was a slow child. Perfect scores across the board. Dated, notarized, and filed with both my attorney and my physician. Jessica Torres was grinning ear to ear. Mrs. Patterson, did you anticipate that someone might question your mental capacity? Honey, I said, when you've been married for 37 years and raised 4 children, you learn to plan for every possible contingency. Especially when those children grow up to be greedy. Derek's phone call to Adult Protective Services had just backfired spectacularly. Instead of casting doubt on my competency, it was about to provide legal documentation of my complete mental fitness. But more importantly, it had just given me the perfect setup for my final, most devastating revelation. Speaking of planning ahead, I said, pulling out my own phone, there's one more thing I should probably mention. The call I made was to someone who'd been waiting 2 hours for my signal. Lily, sweetheart, it's time. Within 15 minutes, a taxi pulled up to the beach house, and out stepped my 17-year-old granddaughter, looking absolutely fierce in her summer camp t-shirt and denim shorts. Grandma Rose, she called out, running toward me with a huge smile. But when she saw her mother's face, her expression shifted to something much more serious. Hello, Mom, Lily said coolly to Carla. Surprised to see me? Carla's face went white. Lily? What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at camp for another week. Well, Lily said, pulling a folder out of her backpack, when Grandma called and explained what you were trying to do, I figured this was more important than arts and crafts. Jessica Torres, who'd been about to leave, suddenly perked up again. This story just kept getting better. Lily, Derek said, trying to sound like the caring stepfather, your grandmother may have told you some things that aren't entirely accurate. Like what? Lily interrupted, her young voice sharp as steel. Like the fact that you tried to sell property that legally belongs to me? Or like the fact that you forged Grandma's signature to steal money from the bank? Now, sweetheart, Carla started, this is complicated adult business. Mom, Lily said, and her voice was so much like mine at that age it gave me chills, I'm 17 years old. I understand complicated adult business just fine. What I don't understand is how you could try to steal from your own family. She opened her folder and pulled out a stack of papers. These are the trust documents. All of them. The ones that make me the beneficiary of the beach house property. The ones that require both my signature and Grandma's to transfer ownership. Lily held up a pen. So here's what's going to happen. If you want to sell this house, you need my permission. And Mom? She looked directly at Carla. You're never getting it. The silence that followed was deafening. Derek found his voice first. Lily, you don't understand the financial implications. I understand perfectly, Lily shot back. I understand that this house is worth about $400,000. I understand that the rental property next door generates $60,000 a year in income. And I understand that you and Mom were planning to steal all of that and leave me with nothing. She turned to the news camera, which Jessica had signaled her cameraman to start rolling again. I also understand that my generation isn't going to let your generation take advantage of our grandparents anymore, Lily said, speaking directly to the camera. We're smarter than you think, we're more connected than you realize, and we're not going to stand by while you treat elderly people like they're disposable. I had never been more proud of anyone in my entire life. Carla was crying now, real tears streaming down her face. Lily, please. We never meant for this to hurt anyone. We thought it would be better for everyone if we handled Grandma's affairs. Handled her affairs? Lily's voice rose in disbelief. Mom, you tried to have her declared mentally incompetent. You lied to doctors, banks, and lawyers. How is that handling anything? We were trying to protect her. From what? From making her own decisions? From living in the house she loves? From building a business that's more successful than anything you and Derek have ever done? Officer Bradley stepped forward. Miss, I'm impressed by your composure, but we need to discuss some legal matters with your parents. Of course, Lily said, suddenly sounding very mature. Should I call my attorney to be present for that discussion? Derek's mouth fell open. Your attorney? Patricia Morrison from Morrison and Associates, Lily said matter-of-factly. She's been my attorney since I became the trust beneficiary. Grandma thought it was important that I have independent legal representation. I watched Derek realize that he wasn't just dealing with a confused elderly woman and her teenage granddaughter. He was dealing with a carefully constructed legal fortress that had been 3 years in the making. Patricia should be here any minute, I added helpfully. I called her right after I called Lily. She's very interested in discussing Derek's call to Adult Protective Services. Something about filing false reports to intimidate elderly clients. Derek was looking around desperately, like he was trying to find an escape route that didn't exist. But I still had one more surprise for him. The biggest one of all. Patricia's car pulled up just as Derek was looking around for an escape route. But it wasn't just Patricia who got out of that car. It was FBI agent Catherine Mills. You could have heard a pin drop on that beach. The ocean breeze was the only sound as Agent Mills walked toward us, her badge clearly visible, her expression all business. Mrs. Patterson, she said, extending her hand, thank you for your patience. We've been working on this case for several weeks now. Carla's voice came out as barely a whisper. What case? Agent Mills turned to face my daughter and her husband. The case involving wire fraud, elder abuse, and identity theft that Mrs. Patterson reported to us 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago. Let that sink in, everyone. While Carla thought she was orchestrating the perfect crime, I had already reported her to the FBI. You see, Agent Mills continued, pulling out a folder thick with documents. Mrs. Patterson came to us when she first discovered her daughter was forging documents and making unauthorized inquiries about her mental capacity. We've been monitoring the situation ever since. Derek's face had gone from white to gray. Monitoring how? Bank records, phone calls to your real estate agent, conversations with insurance companies, Agent Mills listed calmly. We have documentation of every illegal action you've taken over the past 6 weeks. Every forged signature, every false claim, every fraudulent transaction. I stepped forward, and when I spoke, my voice carried the satisfaction of 3 years of planning finally coming together. Derek, did you really think I spent 37 years married to a man who ran a construction business without learning a thing or two about protecting my assets? Did you think I raised 4 children without developing some serious skills in detecting lies and manipulation? Agent Mills nodded approvingly. Mrs. Patterson has been an exemplary cooperating witness. She provided us with copies of every forged document, recordings of threatening phone calls, and detailed financial records showing the fraudulent transactions. Recordings? Carla asked weakly. I pulled out my smartphone, the new one Lily had taught me to use, the one with all the fancy features my family assumed I was too old to understand. Every phone call, sweetheart. Every conversation where you discussed my supposed mental decline, every planning session with Derek about how to handle me, every lie you told to professionals about my competency. I held up the phone. Amazing what these little devices can do these days. Jessica Torres was practically vibrating with excitement. This was turning into the story of a lifetime. Agent Mills continued her presentation like she was delivering a business report. We have your daughter and her husband on multiple federal charges. Wire fraud for the real estate transaction. Identity theft for forging Mrs. Patterson's signature. Elder abuse for attempting to have her declared incompetent. And conspiracy to commit fraud for planning these activities together. But, Derek started desperately, we were trying to help her. She's elderly, she lives alone, we were worried about her making poor financial decisions. Poor financial decisions? I laughed, a sound that came from deep in my chest. Derek, in the time you've been plotting to steal my house, I've increased my net worth by $300,000. I've built a successful business, secured my granddaughter's college fund, and created a revenue stream that will last for decades. I gestured toward the rental cottage. Poor financial decisions would have been letting you and Carla get your hands on my assets. Agent Mills opened her folder and began reading. Derek Martinez, Carla Patterson Martinez, you're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder abuse, and identity theft. As Officer Bradley moved forward with handcuffs, the full magnitude of what I'd accomplished finally hit everyone present. This wasn't just about stopping one fraudulent real estate deal. This was about sending a message that would protect other elderly people from similar schemes. This was about showing my granddaughter that her inheritance was worth fighting for. This was about proving that age doesn't make you helpless, it makes you experienced. "Mom," Carla said as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, tears streaming down her face, "how could you do this to your own daughter?" I walked over to her, close enough to speak quietly, just the two of us. "Carla," I said softly, "you did this to yourself. I gave you every opportunity to stop, to reconsider, to treat me with the respect I've earned. Instead, you chose to see me as a problem to solve rather than a person to love." I reached up and gently touched her cheek, the way I used to when she was small and had scraped her knee. "But here's what you never understood, sweetheart. I didn't do this to hurt you. I did this to protect myself, to protect Lily, and to protect every other grandmother whose children think they're too old to matter." As they loaded Carla and Derek into the police car, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Henry died. I felt powerful. Not angry, not vindictive, but genuinely, completely powerful. But the most satisfying part was still to come. Because while everyone had been focused on the arrests and the federal charges, they'd missed the most important thing of all. The thing that would determine not just my future, but my entire family's legacy. After the police cars drove away and the news crew packed up their equipment, it was just me, Lily, Patricia, and Agent Mills standing on the beach as the sun began to set. "Grandma," Lily said quietly, "what happens now?" I smiled at my granddaughter, this remarkable young woman who'd grown up so much in just one afternoon. "Now, sweetheart, we talk about your future." Patricia opened her briefcase and pulled out a new set of documents. "Lily, your grandmother has asked me to explain some additional arrangements she's made for your inheritance." Agent Mills excused herself, but not before shaking my hand. "Mrs. Patterson, I've been working elder fraud cases for 15 years, and I've never seen someone handle a situation with more grace and strategic thinking. You should be proud." After she left, the three of us sat on my front porch, the same porch where Henry and I had planned our retirement, where we'd watched our grandchildren play, where I'd grieved his loss and planned my comeback. "Lily," I began, "there are some things about your trust that we haven't discussed yet." Patricia spread the documents across the porch table. "The Lily Rose Patterson Family Trust doesn't just include the beach house property. Over the past 3 years, your grandmother has been building something much larger." Lily's eyes widened as she looked at the papers. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said, taking her hand, "that your college fund now includes not just the original house, but the rental property, the business income from the vacation rentals, and some additional investments I made with the profits." Patricia pointed to specific numbers on the financial statements. "Current value of the trust assets, $1.2 million. Lily gasped. "Grandma, that's enough for college and graduate school and a down payment on your first house, and seed money if you want to start a business, and a safety net for whatever dreams you haven't even discovered yet," I finished. But there was more. "Lily," Patricia continued, "your grandmother has also established what's called a legacy provision in the trust." "What's a legacy provision?" I leaned forward, excited to share the part one was most proud of. "It means that every year, on your birthday, the trust will donate money to organizations that fight elder abuse. Your inheritance will help protect other grandparents from what your mother tried to do to me." Lily was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "Grandma, you turned Mom's betrayal into something that will help other people?" "I turned it into something meaningful, sweetheart. Because that's what we do when life tries to break us. We don't just survive, we make sure other people don't have to go through what we went through." Patricia gathered up the papers. "There's one more thing. Lily, when you turn 18 next year, you'll become the full trustee of these assets. Your grandmother is giving you complete control of a very substantial estate. But what about you, Grandma? What about your future? I laughed, the kind of deep, joyful laugh that had been missing from my life since Henry died. Oh honey, your old grandmother is going to be just fine. I've got my house here in Charleston, I've got the income from the rental property, and I've got something even more valuable. What's that? I've got the knowledge that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. That I can take the worst thing my own child could do to me and turn it into the best thing I could do for my granddaughter. As the sun set over Folly Beach, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt Henry's presence stronger than I had since the day he died. Not sad or nostalgic, but proud and peaceful. Lily, I said, your grandfather would have loved seeing you stand up for what's right today. He always said the measure of a person isn't what they do when life is easy, it's what they do when someone tries to take away what matters most. What mattered most to you, Grandma? I looked around at the beach house where so many memories lived, at the rental cottage that represented my new independence, at the waves rolling in with their eternal rhythm. What mattered most was proving that love is stronger than greed. That planning is more powerful than plotting. That an old woman's wisdom can beat a young person's scheme every single time. I stood up and walked to the porch railing, looking out over the water. But most of all, what mattered was showing you that when someone tries to steal your future, you don't just fight back, you build something better. Lily came and stood beside me, slipping her arm through mine. Thank you, Grandma. For protecting my inheritance, for standing up to Mom, for teaching me how to be strong. Thank you, sweetheart, for reminding me that some things are worth fighting for. As the last light faded from the sky, I realized something profound. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a completely new chapter. 3 months later, I was rocking on that same porch when my phone rang. It was Carla, calling from the minimum security federal facility where she was serving her 18-month sentence. Mom, she said, and her voice sounded different. Smaller. More like the little girl I remembered. Hello, sweetheart, I said gently. How are you doing? I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for what I tried to do to you. I closed my eyes and felt the weight of months of anger finally beginning to lift. I know you are, Carla. I kept telling myself we were helping you, that you couldn't handle things on your own. But the truth is, I was jealous. Jealous that you and Dad had something beautiful, jealous that you were stronger than I ever gave you credit for, jealous that even after he died, you found ways to thrive. Oh honey, I said, my voice breaking slightly. Derek and we convinced ourselves that we deserved that house because we needed the money more than you needed the memories. How could I have been so selfish? I was quiet for a moment, listening to the waves crash against the shore, thinking about forgiveness and family and the complicated nature of love. Carla, I finally said, do you remember when you were 8 years old and you broke my grandmother's china teapot? A small laugh through tears. You made me help you glue it back together. And what did I tell you about that teapot? You said that sometimes the broken places make things more beautiful. That the gold lines where we glued it together made it more precious than before. That's right. And that's what we're going to do with our family, sweetheart. We're going to find the gold to fill in the broken places. But Mom, how can you forgive me? I tried to steal everything from you. Because you're my daughter, and I love you. Because people make mistakes, even terrible ones, and they deserve the chance to make things right. And because holding on to anger would poison the beautiful life I've built. We talked for nearly an hour. About her counseling sessions in prison, about Derek's remorse, about their plans to rebuild their lives when they got out. About Lily's college applications and her plans to study social work with a focus on elder care advocacy. Mom, Carla said before we hung up, Lily told me about the legacy provision in the trust. About helping other families avoid elder abuse. What do you think about that? I think it's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. You turned my worst mistake into something that will help people for generations. After I hung up, I sat there rocking until the stars came out. Lily was spending the weekend with me, taking a break from her senior year to help manage the vacation rental business. She'd shown an incredible aptitude for hospitality management, and we'd been talking about expanding to a third property. She came out on the porch carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate, just like Henry and I used to do on cool evenings. "How did the call with Mom go?" she asked. "Better than I expected. I think she's finally understanding what she almost lost." "Are you going to let her back into your life?" I considered the question carefully. "I'm going to let her earn her way back into my life." "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "The difference is that trust, once broken, has to be rebuilt slowly. With actions, not just words. With time, not just apologies." Lily nodded wisely. "Like the China teapot story." Exactly like the China teapot story. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the moonlight dance on the water. "Grandma," Lily said eventually, "do you think this whole experience changed you?" I smiled, thinking about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, grieving, lonely, seen by others as vulnerable and declining. "It didn't change me, sweetheart. It revealed who I always was underneath." Sometimes it takes a crisis to remind us of our own strength. "I want to be like you when I grow up." "You already are, honey. You already are." As I finish telling you this story, it's been 2 years since that phone call that started everything. 2 years since my daughter tried to steal my sanctuary and accidentally gave me the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that I am far stronger than anyone imagined. The vacation rental business now includes 4 properties along the South Carolina coast. Lily graduated high school as valedictorian and is studying hospitality management and elder law at the University of South Carolina. The Patterson Family Foundation has helped protect over 200 elderly people from financial abuse. Carla was released from prison 8 months ago. She's working as a victim advocate for elder abuse cases, using her experience to help other families heal. It's slow going, but we're rebuilding our relationship one conversation at a time. Derek, well, that's a story for another day. But here's what I want you to remember from my story: your age doesn't make you powerless. Your family's opinion of your capabilities doesn't define your actual capabilities. And sometimes, the people who underestimate you the most are the ones who give you the biggest opportunity to surprise them. If you're watching this and you're dealing with family members who treat you like you're too old to make your own decisions, or if you're a younger person who's watching someone take advantage of your grandparents, remember this: knowledge is power, documentation is protection, and sometimes the quietest revenge is the most devastating. Now, I want to hear from all of you amazing people watching Madam Susan's stories from around the world. Drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who underestimated you? What advice would you give to other people facing similar situations? And if this story inspired you, taught you something, or just entertained you for an hour, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Your support helps me share these stories of people who refused to be pushed around, who fought back with intelligence and determination, and who prove that you're never too old to surprise people. Because remember, the best revenge isn't getting even, it's building something so beautiful that your enemies can only wish they'd been your allies instead. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next story. Keep fighting the good fight, and never let anyone convince you that your best days are behind you. Sometimes, they're just getting started.